Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Jake here. Just kind of recapping last 10 years of trying to qualify for the Boston Marathon, and finally got a good enough time to get into the marathon. Just kind of talk about the races I've done in the past leading up to, I just finished the Mount Charleston Marathon with a good time. We'll talk about that when we get to it. So I've been trying to qualify for Boston for 10 years. It was my first attempt at trying to qualify. I'll go through them here too. I got my computer up with the times and dates and everything. The first one was in May of 2015, the Fargo Marathon. I'm in Fargo, I live in Fargo, so I did the hometown marathon. They talk about this race as being fast and flat, which it is. It's very flat. There's a lot of turns within the race though too, so it's one thing to be aware of. But my time at that one, I was 3 hours and 25 minutes. And at that time I was 35 years old and I needed to be 3:10 in order to even have a qualifying time. And as we all know, the last number of years you need to be under your time in order to get in. I started running back in 2012. So leading up to this first race, this first attempt to qualify for Boston 3 years later after starting to run, I still was pretty naive and didn't have a lot of miles on my legs. So I feel like going into that race, I had a very big, lofty goal of qualifying for Boston. Definitely undertrained for it. And I finished that race in 2015. Don't remember the exact training plan. Likely Hal Higdon free plan off the internet, as a lot of people probably have used in the past. They're good plans, don't get me wrong. You got to find out what works for you. I finished that race in 3 hours and 25 minutes. At that time, I was 35 years old. I needed to be 3 hours and 10 minutes in order to qualify. 15 minutes off. Later that fall, I tried at the Twin Cities Marathon. Remember that one too, and it was a hot year. I still had a free plan that I got off the internet. I finished that race pretty much the exact same time, 3 hours and 24 minutes. Thinking about the amount of miles you put in, a lot of people do, you got to get that 20-mile long run. You kind of build up your weekly mileage every week, the long run, build that up every 2 miles, and paces, certain paces you want to stick with. I remember hitting those long runs, and I remember hurting and suffering after the long runs. And you should never hurt or suffer and have to recover after a long run the way I remember having to do it. So I was definitely not doing something right. Could be nutrition. Could be just my pace was too fast, and my condition, my level of fitness probably wasn't what I expected it or wanted it to be. And I think a lot of people that try to qualify for Boston, early on in their running career, realize that it's a lot harder to run fast than it looks on paper. So 2 years later, May of 2017, I tried it again at the Fargo Marathon, and that year a little bit better. At 2017, 37 years old, I needed a 3:10 to get in as well. I ended up 3 hours and 19 minutes. So still a little bit off. And I looked back at my Strava on a couple of these that I have still on my Strava, and I ran good up until about mile 18, 20, and then the wheels kind of come off, as a lot of you probably have that same thing happen. A training block building up for a marathon and doing those long runs and trying to get those long runs in and making sure they're consistent, it can be difficult. And the hard part I learned the hard way is that if you do try to run your long runs at a faster pace, I think you do pay for it ultimately. Those long runs are meant for building up your endurance, right? The speed work, which I didn't do a lot of speed work the way it was described or prescribed in the training plans, and I feel like that probably hurt me, trying to make up for the speed by trying to run my long runs at a race pace. So yeah, fell short there again too by 9 minutes. Later that fall, I ran up in Grand Forks, about an hour away. I felt good about this race, and I remember this one well. The weather was absolutely perfect. It was cool, it was calm, there was no wind. It's flat up there as well. I ran that race 3 hours and 14 minutes. That year I was 37 years old still. I needed to be 3:10, 4 minutes short. That was probably my best effort I gave. I remember that run I ran with a 3:10 pacer, and I ran with him for probably 22 miles, and I just couldn't hang on the last couple miles. And I felt like, all right, what I need to do is be more consistent with my running and not focus on a training plan during an off season and just kind of make sure I keep getting miles in during the week. Not really focusing on a plan, I think kind of helped me kind of gain more of a love for running. I enjoyed running at that point then too, and it was kind of an outlet for me. 2018, gave it another try in the old Fargo Marathon. That year, 38 years old, I need to be 310 again. That 310 has kind of been my number. Gave it my best shot. I remember that year got hot and humid, and I remember my hamstrings cramping. I came around, it was probably about mile 18, 19, and there's a segment on the route that goes by the Fargo Theater down Broadway. I came around that corner, my hamstring cramped, and it was the worst thing ever because that's one of the best parts of the race. The wheels just fell off after that. It was so hot. I finished that year 3 hours, 18 minutes, so 8 minutes off from even qualifying for Boston. So this is where it kind of gets interesting. I signed up for the Big Cottonwood Marathon downhill Salt Lake City. That was in September of 2018. Ran into some marriage problems. Earlier on, I had trained very well for that, and I did a lot of downhill training and a lot of strength training on my quads, kind of eccentric control for my quads, knowing that the downhill is going to kind of eat those up. I trained very well for that, and I felt very confident about it. 3 weeks before that race, found out I was going to be getting divorced, and I took that pretty hard. I don't think I ran from then until the marathon. I decided to still go to the marathon. My buddy and I, we went, had tickets bought, everything arranged. He said, just go, who cares if you run hard, doesn't matter, just have fun. Went to the marathon, a lot of things on my mind, and I just said, you know what, whatever, I'm just gonna run, I'm gonna go for it. I ended up finishing that race 3 hours and 8 minutes and 22 seconds. I was just over a minute and a half under the qualifying time, and that year, 38 years old, I needed to be 310 as well. I was like, all right, finally, I got a Boston qualifying time. That year, unfortunately, was one of those years you had to be about 5 minutes under the time to get into the race, so it was kind of let down then. So that was 2018, divorce happened, life changed. Still ran after that and got my life back together, still enjoyed running, but then COVID hit. 2020. I didn't run a marathon for 4 years after that. I didn't run a marathon. What I did do though is in 2020, when I turned 40 years old, I decided I'm going to run 40 miles for my 40th birthday. So I had a group of friends. I got off work. I worked until about 3 o'clock that day. Had some friends come. They kind of ran with me parts of it. One of my friends, he ran 26.2 miles with me. He got a full marathon in during it. Lindsay ran. She biked during it, part of it. It was great. It was a blast. So I ran 40 miles and I felt great afterwards. And that was kind of the best thing. So later that year, out in western North Dakota, there was a 50-mile trail run out there. I've never ran a trail run before, or I've ran some 5K, 7K trail runs, but never anything like that. I signed up for a 50-mile run out there. Absolutely fell in love with it. I didn't train for it. I didn't really know how to train for it, but I ran it. I ran well, and absolutely fell in love with trail running. I think the best thing about trail running is there's a lot of elevation. You don't run the whole thing. You're not going to run the whole thing, and you run it slower. And I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed kind of running slower. So I ran that 50-mile. During that 50-mile run, I already had it made up in my mind that I'm going to run the 100 next year, and that's what I did. I trained. I ran the 100-miler out there in Medora the next year. And that's kind of what the next few years kind of focused on, was kind of trail running and running longer. So that was, 2021 is when I ran the 100. 2022, Lindsay ran the 50 out there. 23 and 24, we both ran the marathon out there, and just enjoyed out there. Every year, we're gonna go back out there and run something. This year, I'm running the 100 out there again. Lindsay's gonna run the marathon. I kind of decided that I wanna get back on this Boston kick again. February of 2022, I decided I'm going to run the Mesa Marathon. I heard a lot of things. It's kind of a faster marathon. I trained. It was a terrible winter. I trained the entire thing on the treadmill. 100% treadmill running, 0 outside running. The weather was terrible outside. I was 42. I needed to be 310 again. I got to the halfway. I got to the half marathon, and I was 1 hour and 35 minutes and felt terrible. And I just knew, I was like, there is no way I can run this same split for the next half marathon. I ended up running that in 3 hours and 26 minutes, and it was just like, man, this Boston thing is just, it's hard for me. I can run all the miles in the world, but just nothing's happening. And I admit, looking back, like the treadmill runs, I didn't run a lot of speed. The longer runs, I ran slower, which I kind of felt after doing these longer trail runs, the running slower just felt better on my body. Because I was running my runs slower, I was able to run every day during the week, and I felt that built up my endurance very well. My aerobic endurance was very good at that time, but I didn't have a lot of speed, and I didn't enjoy going fast anymore either. It was hard to go fast. Mesa Marathon, complete bust. 2022, there was a last chance Boston qualifier. I had been running quite a bit. Lindsay wanted to pick up some speed too, so we were doing a little more track workouts, and I really enjoyed the track workouts. Put a lot of focus on the track and the speed. I signed up for this last chance Boston qualifier marathon in Geneva, Illinois, down by Chicago. We drove down there. September 10th was the date of that, 2022. 42:3:10 was my time. I remember that race. So that race was pretty cool, and I tell you what, if you don't mind running loops, that's the race for you. I enjoyed every bit of it. I could run laps and laps. It doesn't bother me one bit. Kind of a smaller loop, and then you run 8 kind of three-ish mile loops, and you get to see Lindsay was there every time I crossed that same spot. They had water bottle stations you could set up. I felt amazing during that race. The wheels kind of fell off towards the end of that race, unfortunately. I remember looking at my watch, and I was like, I know what I need to do. I need to run basically like a 20-minute 5K. I don't remember exactly what it was. I gave it everything I had, and man, at the end, I was done. I finished that race 3 hours, 11 minutes, and 39 seconds. And I just thought, man, for 24 of those miles, I thought I had it in the bag. And I think that year, if I remember right, you just had to hit your qualifying time in order to get into the race. So I fell short once again. 42, you know what? I said, I'm going to wait until I turn 45, until I'm eligible for the 45-year-old age group. And then I'm going to try this Boston thing again. I'm going to get 10 extra minutes. What happens last year? Everyone's time is down. You know, you're 7 minutes under the qualifying time to get in. They take 5 minutes off the time again. It's like, great. So, well, I get 3:15 now. So last year, right about this time, my buddy Brad, they ran the Mount Charleston Marathon. He said it's really fast. He had a Boston qualifying time, but still was not far enough under the time to get in. He said, sign up for this one. So as soon as it opened up, I signed up for it. I signed up a year ago. So time went on, and I had a hard time kind of getting ready for this race. The training was not a problem. I wasn't worried about that. The logistics of getting down there, you know, taking off work. Lindsay wasn't going to be able to go because she had prior commitments and she had taken a bunch of vacation already. So I'd be down there with those guys for a while, but then I'd kind of be on my own in Vegas for a couple days just due to how the flights work from Fargo. They don't come very often. And I was trying to think about, okay, how am I going to do this race? Should I do this race? Am I going to do this race? Those types of things. Brad called me up on the phone. He's like, hey, let's get your plane ticket. Let's go. I was like, all right, fine, let's do it. And I booked a ticket, and I was like, all right, I got to start training for this thing. Jumped on the treadmill like I did for that big Cottonwood Marathon. Started running a lot of downhill, and I ran them at a faster pace just because I didn't have a lot of time. I had about a month to get ready for this. I put together a couple big weeks. My final week, it was 3 weeks before the marathon. I ran 70 miles all downhill on the treadmill, and I felt amazing. So Friday to fly out to Vegas for this race. My flight was delayed for 3 hours. Got in a little later than I wanted. Got some food in, had a good time, whatever. Didn't sleep well the night before. We had to get up early to get on this bus. I got up early at like 2:20. I like to get up early and just kind of get moving a little bit before. But it was great. We got on the bus. We got up to the top. The gun went off. That's all I had. I gave it all I had. Went into the 45-year-old age group. I needed to be 3:15. I thought, I'm going to be 3:10. That's going to be my goal. I looked down at my watch a few times, and I was, 6:40, 6:50, but I felt amazing. My heart rate was low. I wasn't breathing heavy. I don't run with headphones. I could hear people. If you ever ran a marathon, you hear those people kind of huffing and puffing and groaning, and they were groaning kind of early on. And I was like, man, that's not me right now. I feel amazing. Got near the finish line and it got hard towards the end. I think my slowest mile was just under an 8-minute mile, but I finished strong. I finished 3 hours, 3 minutes, and 59 seconds. So 11 minutes under the qualifying time. Finally have a good enough time to get into Boston. Why did I think things went well? I had a month to train for this race seriously. I've been consistent with running the last number of years, I think. So the Mesa Marathon 2022, last chance, that Boston qualifier out by Chicago, I felt pretty good going into the one in Chicago, and pretty much since 2022 I've been running every day. A lot of slower runs, some of them, you know, it's just because I enjoy running. I like the way it makes me feel, but I've been consistent with running every day. And I think leading up to this race, I think that's what got me the better time. I picked up the speed here the last month or so, and that definitely has helped. I think my aerobic endurance is finally kind of paying off. Finally, 10 years later, you know, it's finally paying off. But I felt amazing during the race. I wouldn't change a single thing about it. I hydrated well. I had good nutrition with gels. I used the BPN Go gels. I had 4 of them during the race. Never felt bad, no stomach issues, anything like that. You know, being consistent, find a training plan that works for you. Speed work, you can break that up in different ways. Fartleks, tempo runs, just track workouts, treadmill workouts, those types of things. Find out what's gonna work for you to pick up that speed. Take the long run slow, nothing wrong with that, as long as you get your speed work in somehow. I've enjoyed running I started running in 2012, and I've as the years have gone on, I've enjoyed it more and more, and it's just a part of my life. And I feel like if you have a goal to run Boston, you know, make it a priority to focus on those things that are going to get you there. Find a coach if you need to. Find a training plan that's going to work. Hold yourself accountable if you don't have anybody else to hold you accountable. And that dream will become a reality, because finally 10 years later, it has become a reality for me. So I wish you guys nothing but luck. Comment below if you have any questions. I got links to training plans below too. If you need anything, reach out. I hope you enjoyed the video. Comments, questions, like and subscribe. We're going to be back soon with a race recap of that Mount Charleston Marathon, so stay tuned.